Psalm 75 with 10 verses call us to appreciate our position in this world as a people who should desire the righteousness and justice of God, instead of being part of a wicked generation of this world that promote ungodliness. Now, considering that Psalms were written in the context of Israel, which was a nation called apart by God and founded on divine principles revealed to the patriarchs and prophets, constantly chided by God like a father to bring them back to the right ways, seem to be lost in the unrighteous ways of the world. And at times, the people of Israel acted in a very godless manner. That is the background of this psalm. We don't have much information about the background in its introduction, namely the title. The title reads, "To the chief musician, Al-Taskith, a psalm or song of Asaph." Now, some believe this was written by David or written for David by Asaph, who was a musician in David's choir that he gathered for the house of God. And if it is written by David, it was written to the chief musician. And the word Al-Taskith is a word that is translated as "do not destroy." Exactly what it means in musical terms is not known, but it is generally understood as a psalm in which prayer is made to God so that He may defend the city and God's people against the evildoers. There are various opinions about who wrote it and what kind of situation could have caused this psalm to be written. Some says during David's time, just as David was about to be anointed as Israel's king. There are reasons for it I will mention as we go through this psalm. And some others believe when Sennacherib, the Assyrian king, was about to attack Israel, this prayer was made. And varying opinions such as that are mentioned. Now, I must say that in the psalm itself, we do not have any particular reference to any of these. It can be also, in my opinion, taken as a song of Asaph, like we have other psalms written by Asaph. It could be Asaph himself, or like the previous psalm, Psalm 74, attributed to Asaph, was definitely not written by Asaph. but one of the members of Asaph's family who continue to serve God. Because Psalm 74, which we studied last week, was a psalm written upon the destruction of Jerusalem. And so, could this be written at the same time? I do not know. However, we know this was a psalm written for God's people to sing, to think, and understand the importance of honoring God as a God of justice and righteousness, and never to pursue evil ways of the world. Now, again, there is another concern about the interpretation of this psalm, is that some have taken this psalm as a psalm written for God, or God asked the writer of this psalm to write it down on his behalf. So whenever you see the first personal pronoun I, it is a reference to God. For example, you can see verse 1 begins with a statement, unto thee, O God, do we give thanks. So that is not God speaking, God's people speaking. But when we come to verse 2, it says, when I shall receive the congregation, I will judge uprightly. Verse 3, the earth and all the inhabitants thereof are dissolved. I bear up the pillars of it. And because of verse 3, it seems to be a mammoth task to hold up the earth and the pillars of it, meaning to say it is sustained by the speaker. So a good number of commentators and preachers tend to think, and also many of the modern versions translate this as though God is the speaker. And so this is a tough part. And when we come to the last two verses, you again see this first personal pronoun, and it says, I will declare forever, I will sing praises to the God of Jacob. All the horns of the wicked so also will I cut off, but the horns of the righteous shall be exalted. Now, who is the one who is going to cut off all the horns of the wicked? Can it be a man or God? So a general thought that is prevalent is that it is God who's speaking in first personal pronoun. Now, that is an honorable view, in my opinion. It is not unsound view. Nonetheless, I am inclined to think it is the psalmist himself, representing all God's servants, speaking here. Let's take time to think through this. Verse 1 is a praise to God for holding this earth under his supervision. Unto thee, O God, do we give thanks. Unto thee do we give thanks. For that thy name is near, thy wondrous works declare. Now, as we can see, the psalmist is extremely grateful to God for his great work. He praises God and he says, we give thanks unto thee. Repeatedly, he says that. For that thy name is near, thy wondrous works declare. Well, some have translated it as, for thy name is near, and men tell of your wonderful deeds. It is obvious there are two major thoughts in the last part of verse 1. One is that God's name is near. And second truth is that his works are being declared, of course, by those who give thanks. So let's pay attention to these two reasons for praising God. First, the fact that His name is near. We know God is everywhere. We normally refer to it as the omnipresence of God. Omnipresence of God. Now, we also know the Bible says He is far from us. He is high in the heavens. And He lives in unapproachable light. But the Bible does not allow His people to think as a God who is distant from us. He wants us to understand that He is ever near us. And theologians normally refer to the nearness of God as immanence of God. I-M-M-A-N-C-E. Not immanent. Immanent means quickly. But immanence, M-A-M-M-A, immanence. And that means God is near. His nearness. God wants us to know that His immediate presence can be expected by God's people all the time. And we must acknowledge it, that He is near me. His immediate presence. And He acts on their behalf. As a second reason for thanksgiving says, with wondrous works. God's ways are amazing. He is not limited by the natural laws. We can only work within the natural laws. But God can work using the natural laws for us and even beyond. And that's why God's works are described here as wondrous. Wondrous means beyond what we can expect, beyond what we can in a normal sense, think. There are many times where God uses both natural and supernatural means to help us. In the Bible, we have so many such stories. Yesterday, when we had men's seminar studying the life of Elijah, I brought up this point. And I said, normally when God works through natural laws, we call it the providence of God. The Lord provides us naturally the things that we expect. The Lord gives us spouses. God gives us children, which are all within the natural realm. But there are times when God acts wondrously, miraculously. He may use natural means, but then those things normally don't function that way. And one of the examples that I gave you yesterday was how God fed Elijah through ravens that brought meat for him, food for him. Now, it is interesting that God can use amazing ways. Like when the brook in Cherith dried up, God sent him beyond the borders of Israel to the north to a little village called Zarephath and sent him to a woman with a child with almost no food to survive, only with the last meal. And when the lady provided the last meal for the prophet, who was hungry and thirsty, she was prepared to die because there's no more meal. And famine was all over the world, all over that world at that time. But then God provided for them every day. There was plenty of flour, plenty of oil, and they survived until the rain came. Now, those are miraculous ways in which God sustains his people. The world may be in great trouble because God acts against their wickedness. But God knows how to use his people to work out his plan and purpose in miraculous ways. And God's servants have to say every day, as the psalmist says here, O Lord, thy name is near us, and thy wondrous works declare. Blessed is a man or woman who recognizes the Lord's presence. Again, the word name indicates God's person and character that reveals his works. His works are evidences of his presence. His name means everything that God is. So, dear brethren, here the psalmist rises up to praise God and repeatedly says, do we give thanks, do we give thanks, or we do give thanks, we do give thanks, because your name is near, your wondrous works we declare. Is an appreciation for whatever God has already done. When you look back in your life, do you see God's work, or you only see what you have done in your life? When you look at the house that you live in, when you look at your children, when you look at the car you drive, when you look at your work, when you look at your health, when you look at many things that the Lord blessed you with, do you see this is God's nearness to you? Or do you say, oh, look what I have done, look what I have earned, look what my children have done? Or do you say, blessed be his name, the Lord was near, the Lord was with me, the Lord blessed my work. If God didn't bless my work, all my labor will be in vain. Except the Lord build a house, our labor is in vain. Except the Lord keep the city, all the soldiers labor in vain. Now the Lord has blessed my labor. Blessed be his name. You know, dear brethren, we must thank God all the time. Just now we sang thanks to God for bountiful blessings. And that must be always at the tip of our tongue. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. You have blessed me. And you must thank him so to the point that you don't love anything you have but God. There are people who say, thank you, God, then as though their job is done, and they start to look at these things are the things that they should love the most. It shouldn't be the case. All of us must know that the Lord is ever near us, and we have no reason to worry or fear. And let's rejoice in his immanence, his presence, more than the presence of the blessings we have. Do you love the one who blessed you or the blessings you received? People tend to love the blessings more than the giver, and that's not good. Do you adore the things that God gave more than God himself? It's a great sin. It's causing these things to be an idol, to distract you. God never blesses us with things so that we may be distracted from him. No. It will be horrible. So may God help us to be thankful people and thanksgiving people. It's not enough to be thankful, but be thanksgiving. Praise him, thank him, speak of his wonderful ways. It is not only sufficient for us to receive it, but let us thank him. There are many ways to thank God. according to scriptures. I don't have time to talk about all of it. One is to say thank you to the Lord and then use the things that God has given to fulfill His will, whether in supporting God's work or supporting the poor. And when you make your generous gifts for ministry or for helping those in need, you should never take glory to yourself. You must say, the Lord wants me to give you this. This is what the Lord entrusted you with for this purpose. And I'm just bringing it to you. Praise the Lord. It is from the Lord. We must be sincere in saying it. And we must understand God is using us as a channel. And that's what thanksgiving people would do. Not just say, thank you, Lord, and keep it for yourself. And also, if you're thankful, you must be where God wants you to be to thank Him. Because there are people who get stuck to those blessings that God gave and will not come to church to thank Him, and will not be at the table when the Holy Communion is celebrated. It's a Thanksgiving time. It is called Eucharist. That's a word that is commonly used in some Christian circle. Eucharist or Eucharisteo in Greek means to give thanks. In remembrance of the Lord and for what He has done, and we give Him thanks. And we will be together to praise the Lord. And that's why here, though this is written by one man, the statement shows us a collective response of God's people to a God who is near. I read that verse one more time before I move on. Unto Thee, God, O God, do we give thanks. Unto Thee do we give thanks, for Thy name is near. Thy wondrous works declare. And now we move on to verse 2. As I said, verse 2 to verse 5 is seen normally by people as God speaking to act in judgment. But I would like to present it that God's servant speaking on behalf of God for His judgment. God's servant speaking on behalf of God for His judgment. Because every man on earth, I'm referring to God's people, God's servants, are under obligation to God to carry out His will. And God's will is holy, God's will is righteous and just. And when we commit ourselves to do God's will and judgment, we are acting for God. And every servant of God must commit himself with vows such as this, what he would do when God gives him an office, when God gives him a duty. Look at what he says in verse 2. When I shall receive the congregation, I will judge uprightly. Now, interestingly, the word translated here as congregation in Hebrew can also mean an appointed gathering or an appointed time for gathering. And the King James Bible has translated it differently. In different occasions, this word has been differently translated. But it is not at all unusual to translate it as congregation. There are others who would translate this as when accepted time would come, I will act. And that is one way some other translations have put it. In other words, when God's appointed time of judgment come, God will act. But I don't see why I should reject the King James translation here, translated by godly men of great knowledge of language and theology. And I would stick to this translation, which says, when I shall receive the congregation, I will judge uprightly. In other words, whoever this be, when he is in the position to receive God's people coming to him, which is the appointed time, definitely. It is a gathering God calls, such as a Lord's Day service, or if it is, let's say, uttered by a king in Israel, then when the king receives the nation, and as he ascends the throne, and as he speaks to the congregation of his nation, it is his duty to act on God's behalf to judge the people righteously. And today, if I speak on behalf of God, being appointed by him as a pastor of this church, I should say, Lord, I will receive this congregation and I will judge uprightly, meaning I will govern this church according to thy word. And that is the duty of everyone whom God appoints. So a father should say so when he sees his wife and children, say, Lord, I will judge this house for you. God has spoken such wonderful words. Now let's turn back to Genesis chapter 18. A couple of days ago on Friday when we had the campus ministry, this is one passage that I brought to their attention because we are learning the self-revelation of God in the Bible, and we talked about the way God revealed himself to Abraham. Now please look at verse 19. Genesis 18, verse 19. God says about Abraham, I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he had spoken of him. This is God's prediction about Abraham. And God says, I know that Abraham knows that I have called him out of idol-worshipping family. And I brought him to be in a promised land. For what reason? That he may command his children. By the way, he still hasn't seen a child born through Sarah. He had Ishmael. He's waiting for Isaac to be born. But God says with clear terms that Abraham will guide his family in the way of the Lord to do justice and judgment. And he says he will command. Unfortunately, today we have men in our families who have no voice. The wife's voice and children's voice often drown them out. And they are like negotiating always with their wives and children. Please, la, come on, la. Have mercy on me, la. Partially because of the rebellious spirit that you see in the wife and children, and partially because they themselves are not godly men with a full conviction about what God says. And right from the beginning of your family life, you must take this position. I am with God, and I will not let this family ever go in a way that is not right according to God's word. You do what I say. It doesn't matter whether my father or your mother says, or that man in your office say, or in the neighborhood say. What happens in this house has to be according to God's word. You are expected, dear men, as head of the family, to have the voice of God with all its authority to be brought to the ears and hearts of your family members. You must have a commanding voice. not to say what you want, but God wants. To do justice and judgment. When men in the family are so weak, you will see the family is all over. A commanding voice of a husband, a father, as God said about Abraham, will lead the family in the way of the Lord to do what is right in His sight. Every family that is all over the place and not where God wants them to be, shows that the man in the family has failed. And so is every church and every nation. And so here, when a godly man writes this psalm, being thankful for all the blessings that God gave in the nation and in the families, says, O Lord, when I shall receive the congregation, when you give me a congregation to minister to, I will judge uprightly. Make that decision one more time today. If you have a family to go back to, if you have an area of ministry that God has given to you, then you better pray right now in response to this word that God gives to you. That, Lord, I will judge uprightly as you expect me to. If you don't make that decision, you have no value of any kind in the Lord's purposes and kingdom. You are just useless. Because God wants His authority to be exercised in the life of God's people. And God expects those whom God places in the leadership of the families and the church and the nation of Israel to act on behalf of God. Yesterday, when we studied in the seminar what happened to the nation of Israel when King Ahab married Jezebel, the daughter of King of Tyre, a wicked woman. She brought along 400 over prophets of Baal. And the city was immediately converted into a place of worship of Baal within the boundaries of Israel. But there was a voice, authoritatively speaking. There was a voice of Elijah. The king's voice was to care for himself and for the prophets of Baal. But God's voice in Israel was to be the voice that they heard through Elijah. And he challenged them to a battle on Mount Carmel. And he proved the Lord is the only authoritative one. Dear brethren, there is a battle going on in this world. And let's really understand this. And that battle is happening in your heart and in your house and in this church and everywhere. There is a war within you, waged by your own flesh, the lust of the flesh that war against your soul. There is a war that goes on in your family. The world is trying to creep in and take the minds of all of you to be worldly than godly. There's a war that happens within this church. And I have said very clearly yesterday, our greatest war is worldliness. Thank God, most of the doctrinal issues that we face in the recent history has been settled in any way, in a general way. Most of you, I believe, if not all, takes the same stand on doctrines. However, many families in this church have been very secular, very worldly. And that's a reality. We are fighting. We are not ready to put down the arms that God has equipped us with. I mean the spiritual armor. And we are going to shout it out. And as long as the Lord give me a voice to preach from this pulpit, I will see this congregation as a battle. as a war that I have to fight to keep you in godliness. I must say, sincerely, I'm sorry for all this cough. It's pretty strange. I don't have cough most of the time. But when I'm about to preach, it comes up and it's really irritating. Please pray that I will be able to preach without much interruption. I wanted to say just now that my prayer is that I will not let even one soul be taken away by the devil without a fight. And every one of you must stand up with me. We must be up in arms against the world that try to take our minds. We cannot surrender our children's mind to the world. Starting with our toddlers, our little babies, how we bring them up, what we use to decorate them. I mean, you buy all kinds of T-shirts and clothes and toys, and you try to think what kind of cartoons could help your children to be occupied. And, all this stuff really matters. You got to think. You got to have a voice, and the voice of God in all these matters. What school they are going, whether they should go to school, all this have to be determined. An Australian gentleman who was here a couple of weeks ago told me his struggle in Melbourne. He wanted to send his daughter to a Christian school, and he thought it's best to send her to a girls' school, a Christian girls' school. So he went to that school with his wife to hear about the school's policies and all that. And when he was there, everything seemed to be generally okay. And then he went around the school to take a look at the school. And they allowed them to see classrooms and so on. And suddenly he noticed a particular classroom was closed, but it created a certain curiosity in him to know what this is all about. And so he asked the teacher later, and the teacher's reply was that, well, this is for those who are in the transition stage to be girls. So that particular room is to help boys who think they are girls and help them to be girls. It's a Christian girls' school. So the man asked, how about girls who think that they are boys, or they are also in the same room? We help them in the transition. And he looked at me, Pastor, what shall I do? This is the only school I could think of near my house which can teach my child. But I said, ask your child to be at home, and you too do the homeschooling. We are thinking about it. Now, thank God we have not gone to that stage yet, but we are very close. You better keep your eyes open. Starting with nursery. There are teachers there which teach our children. They may have all these habits, these sinful ways. And they will influence our kids. You put your kids before certain cartoons. Oh, there's Superman and this man and that man. He said, okay, Pastor. I said, no, these are not okays. The toys you buy, the monsters they create, it influences their minds. The pictures on the T-shirts and the words that they show. Well, it can be from Adidas or Nike or Reebok or whatever. But the messages they carry, and the people who promote these things, when you buy certain brands and give to children, they are thinking about those who are promoting it. It can be sports people, it can be singers, it can be dancers or whatever. But they also come with certain lifestyle, certain philosophies. And they will make mention of it here and there in video clips or in interviews. And children would subscribe it. After all, they are portraying them in the pictures that they have on their shirts and so on. It's a terrible way in which the world is fighting for the minds of our kids. And that's why it is a shocking reality. Now, please don't take it as Pastor Koshi telling some stories to you. This is real. I am watching families crying because their children who have been to this church walking out and say, I want to have sex change. Or I want to be regarded as this and that. This is not a strange thing anymore. So let every man know this. When God gives you a congregation, you rise up and say, I'm not going to do things as the world wants me to do. I'm going to do as the Lord wants. And the Lord is my help. You know why we would dare to do this? Because He is nearer than the world is. He is near us with His wonderful works. Just like in the time of Ahab and Jezebel, Elijah stood up and see God's amazing provision through ravens and through widows to sustain him. We can trust our God. When you speak a word for God in your home, in your heart, there will be a lot of worries. How about this? How about that? How about that? You say, the Lord is near. He who holds the future is with us. He will guide us. He will provide for us. He will protect us. If we have to die, He will give us strength to die. This is not our home. But I have a clear thinking. We must have clear thinking. Let every man say, when I shall receive the congregation, I will judge uprightly. Verse 3, the earth and all the inhabitants thereof are dissolved. I bear up the pillars of it. Well, dear friends, earth and all the inhabitants thereof are dissolved is generally a reference to how the world is disintegrating in immorality. And when the world disintegrates in immorality, God's wrath comes upon it, and it is a messy place to live in. But in the midst of it, when God appoints us to be in charge of certain realms, whether it's family or church, we have to act strongly like a pillar. And we shouldn't doubt that. God has called us to be pillars of the society. Would you come to 1 Timothy? And chapter 3, verse 15. What does God expect of the church in a time like this? 1 Timothy 3:15. But if Paul says to Timothy, who was facing a lot of difficulty in the church in Ephesus as a pastor, he says, if I tarry long, that thou mayest know how thou oughtest to behave thyself in the house of God. He says, Timothy, you are appointed to look after the church there. You must know how to behave yourself in the house of God, which is the church of the living God. What is the church called? The pillar and the ground of the truth. a pastor is entrusted to hold up the church according to God's word through his good behavior, biblical behavior. And when a pastor conducts himself according to God's word and hold the church responsible to obey the word of God, God uses that church to become the pillar and ground of the truth. God's justice, God's truth is held high by his people who are given the responsibility to hold the congregation rightly. My duty as a pastor is to make judgment of all kind of lifestyle on this earth. And I have to tell you from this pulpit, that sort of behavior is unbiblical. We cannot be like that. That sort of behavior, whether it's men or women or children or youth, are not acceptable for Christians. We cannot conform to the world because it contradicts the Bible. It causes us to become vain, useless, meaningless in our spiritual pursuit. We got to be a people of substance. We got to be people like pillar and strong ground, which holds up what is right according to God's word. This is God's judgment. And when we read it, we accept it by faith. We apply it in our life through obedience. And that makes us a strong voice for God in a wicked generation. The church cannot be silent. God's people cannot be silent. You are called to live in your community or your neighborhood for God. And there is a battle. Many people will frown at you. Many people may even chase you out of your house. Like Elijah was asked by God himself to go into hiding. But your voice cannot be compromised. Every man must stand with God and say what God says. We are not supposed to leave it to God. We are supposed to let God work through us. That is to say, we comply, not that we have to give him permission to do it. He is sovereign, he can do it, and he calls us. And I think God calls me, that's why I'm saying this. And my duty is to conform to him, yield to him, obey him. And that first begin by the conviction God gives to me, and then speak it, articulate it clearly for the rest of the people to hear it. A judgment requires clear articulation of truth. It cannot be like wishy-washy. It may be difficult in the minds of most people, but those who are supposed to judge must be clear-minded, precise, exact. If you are not clear-minded and exact, there is no authority, there is no clarity. God's word is perfect, it's clear. His judgments are true and righteous together. And he gives us a voice. And that voice cannot be subdued and suppressed. How have you received your responsibilities that God has given? Do you have that godliness that God is looking for? Verses 4 and 5. I said unto the fools, you can know who are fools. They may be the wise men of the world, but they are fools in your sight because you know what God wants. You know who are God's enemies? Let's go. He says, I said unto the fools, deal not foolishly, and to the wicked lift not up the horn. Don't be so proud. The word horn is repeated in this psalm a few times, in the next verse and later. It means the pride of man. Horn, like animal horn. When the animal shows its horn, it's trying to impress others that he has the strength to take them on. So the righteous man is supposed to say, Like Elijah said to Ahab, bring on your prophets. I will see them alone on Mount Carmel. And the Lord is with me. How he taunted them on that day. Oh, maybe your God went for a walk. Maybe he's relieving himself. Maybe he's sleeping. Wake them up. Oh, he mocked the prophets of Baal in Mount Carmel. Said, come on, shout louder, louder. They screamed from morning till evening. Nothing happened. Then in the time of evening sacrifice, after repairing an old altar that was broken, altar for the Lord that was used before by God's people, he repaired it. He put 12 stones represent Israel and called on God. But he did something else. He also asked them to pour water over the altar. And he also built a trench to fill it with water to show that there is no trickery here. You can pour water, but still God is able to burn up the sacrifice. And suddenly the fire came. His wondrous works are near. Do you know, dear friends, fools will compromise and be quiet. But God's servants would say, you don't mock God. Don't lift up your horns. Verse 5, lift not up your horn on high. Speak not with a stiff neck. I know there are people within the congregation, even here, who speak with arrogance. They laugh at the pastor. They laugh at the message. Never mind. What is he talking about? I have one message for you. When God's word is clear, you don't run against the wall. You enjoy yourself. Like Jesus said to Saul before he became Paul, don't kick against the prick. You may be a king. You may be a prince. You may be a mighty man in this world. But don't lift up your horn high, because there is God. Let's look at verses 6 and the following to verse 8. For promotion cometh neither from the east, nor from the west, nor from the south, but God is the judge. He putteth down one and setteth up one another. For in the hand of the Lord there is a cup, and the wine is red. It is full of mixture, and he poureth out the same. But the dregs thereof, all the wicked of the earth shall wring them out and drink them. Well, dear brethren, the Bible here clearly says, with great assertion, that God is the judge. He is the one who promotes one and takes another down. God is not afraid of anything in this world. An army may come from the east or from the north or west or south. People may say, oh, I will help you. I will help you. Listen to us. Or they may threaten you. I will take you down. If you stand up for God, we will come with an army. Or we will use these instruments that we have against you. But no weapon can work against you when the Lord is near you. He has His way of protecting us and using us until our time is done. Many of God's servants died in the hands of the enemies. We have a long list of names such as that in the Bible, starting with Abel, the first martyr, killed by his brother Cain. This kind of opposition can happen within the families, okay? Within the family. But Abel was not a loser. He told the world as a martyr There is a price to pay in this battle. Those who are not willing to sacrifice cannot be a fighter for God. Those who love their wives and children and their position and everything in this world are not counted in. That's why Jesus said, deny yourself and follow me. We must be willing to pay the price for our King, our Lord. Our duty is not to win the world for ourselves, but our duty is to raise the standard of God in this world, even His name. And so we leave the matter about our promotion to God. Because if God decides to promote us, He will promote. Let's stay with Him. He's the judge. Our promotion doesn't come merely by our work. Even in the church, Paul said to the Corinthians, I planted, Apollos watered, but God giveth the increase. This is not Pastor Koshi's work. This is God's work. This is not a group of Gethsemane's elders working hard. Yes, we do by the grace of God. But the church has come to this level because God in heaven had mercy upon us and blessed us and brought all of you and strengthened us to do the work of God in different parts of the world. And we continue to do it, and we expect God to promote us. We don't rely on any institution or any man. When we announce about our church building project, one church leader shouted, oh, they are soliciting funds. We don't help them. We don't need their magazine. Very well. You don't have to send us anything. God will build this house. Didn't God build it? He built it. We enjoyed it for past 6 to 7 years. We are not begging anyone. We let know the world what God is doing here. Those who want to be part of it are welcome. Those who do not want can stay out. We will do God's work. We have set our eyes upon Him, not upon anybody's bank account or anybody's special help. There's one pastor, a very dear pastor, I loved him a lot, once tried to tell me something which I thought is unacceptable in the light of God's word. He pointed to one particular BP church that got very close to a politician and then said, look, you see, they invite that politician for their certain functions. And they got him to help the church to get some permission or whatever. I say, very well. Then he told me this, you must also learn from this. Sometimes make good connections. I said to him, a senior man, I have not done it, and I will never do it. When I was applying for employment pass years ago, because I was from India, I was on student pass, when the church wanted to get me to preach here, we decided to apply for employment pass. At least 4 or 5 times I have been asked by very good Christian men who loves me, who cares for the church, told me, let's go and see the MP. Let's ask them to help. I said, no. And some argued, why not? It's for our good. I said, look, I'm a foreigner. MPs are not supposed to work for foreigners. They are supposed to work for locals. You want to go and see as a Singapore citizen, you want to go and see the MP, that's fine with me. But for me, I'm a foreigner, and if the Lord wants to give me an employment pass, He will give to me. I will wait. I never went to see anyone. I don't want to give some very, very obvious situations where I was this close to certain people. But I didn't open my mouth. Not once. Not that it's wrong to ask MPs to help or ministers to help. But I have made a commitment in my heart. I will never seek a man's help, but the Lord's help. And the Lord helped me all the time through many men whom God sent. God can send a raven or a cockroach to help me. That I believe. Every creature is at his disposal. Yeah, you may run away when you see a cockroach. Very good. God will send a cockroach to send you away. So I can sit here and peacefully preach. God has his way of using it. Don't laugh. God used hornets to defeat the enemies of Israel. Anything and everything is at his disposal. You better believe this. That's how God works. God is the judge. He putteth down one and setteth up another. Blessed be his name. And that includes me. Maybe he's going to put me down. But I'm not going to be afraid because that's God's plan. My time is up and God will raise another one. Just like God said to Elijah, Elijah, it's time, come home. God sent the chariots of fire, took him away, and God said, now the mantle is upon you, Elisha. Elisha says, give me a double portion, O Lord. Now, what do you mean by double portion? Double portion is simply an expression in ancient times of Israel, the inheritance of the first son. The first son is given the inheritance of the father and is sometimes referred to as double portion. In other words, there were other prophets waiting. If you read the context of Elisha being taken up, there were other disciples of Elisha also watching. And it has to be told who will take the mantle of Elijah and serve. And that is reflected in that statement, double portion. Not any of those prophets. They are good prophets, but not them. God will replace his servants at his time with the right people to carry on the work. The church didn't die, though great stalwarts of faith have died. Preaching goes on. And I'm here for a generation that God gave to me. And I will not be here for one more second than what God said. Who will be doing the next work? Don't say to me, Pastor, it's hard to fill your shoes. Who will rise up? Look to God. We serve a great God. He is able to raise a better voice than mine, stronger voice than mine, who is able to do greater work in the tougher times that is to come. Blessed be his name. Every man in his time will serve God. And we don't fear all this. God is the judge. He is the one who gives promotion. And his hand is carrying a cup with wine that is red, full of mixture. It points to God's furious wrath. And God will pour it out, as the last part of verse 8 says, and the wicked will drink it. In other words, there is an appointed time when God will act on his own and he will judge. But for now, we represent God and we speak his words of judgment. And so we come to the concluding verses 9 and 10. But I will declare forever, I will sing praises to the God of Jacob. Now, what is he going to declare? What is he going to sing? That God is a judge and his word is to be trusted and followed after. And I will declare it. Every man who is in the position to receive God's congregation, God's people, God's responsibility, must declare God's truth and sing his praise. We will not lament, we will not weep. Even if we weep, we will try to renew our strength in his word and sing songs to him. All the horns of the wicked also will I cut off, but the horns of the righteous shall be exalted. Under your area of rule that God gave you, it's your duty to maintain holiness, righteousness. It is your duty to cut off anyone who comes around and try to usurp God's authority that you represent in your preaching, in your administration. And we must have a commitment. And I pray that all the preachers and elders and deacons of this church, and all the men who are heads of the families will go and do this one work. Don't let the devil and his minions take root among us. Let's preach the word. Let's hold the fort. Let's don't fall by his grace. Let's fight a good fight and win this battle